Sanctity of life issues are generally focused around either the beginning or the end of life. Today we'll consider the primary issue connected with the beginning of life, abortion. Statistics vary on this emotional topic, but most of the studies I saw showed that about half of all pregnancies in the United States are unplanned, and that about 40% of those unplanned elect to have an abortion. Of those who have chosen to have an abortion, about 60 to 70% cited the number one reason is one of the following. They don't feel they're ready for the responsibility of having a child. They don't feel they can afford a child. And they're concerned about the way having a child would impact their current lifestyle. The topic of abortion is not a new thing. In fact, did you know that it dates back to before the life of Jesus? The Hippocratic Oath is a popular medical doctrine that has been adapted over time. But in its original form, it actually refers to abortion. The original oath includes, I will neither give a deadly drug to anybody who asks for it, nor will I make a suggestion to this effect. Similarly, I will not give to a woman an abortive remedy. In purity and holiness, I will guard my life and my art. In other words, doctors for centuries have recognized that abortion is the taking of an innocent life. It's only in the past century that it's become so accepted. You know, abortion is big business. Estimates show that the industry earns around $500 million each year. So how did we get to this point? How did the abortion industry grow to the level of aborting over 60 million babies since 1973? And that's just in the United States alone. One of the largest abortion providers in the United States is Planned Parenthood, a women's health organization founded by Margaret Sanger. You probably aren't surprised when I tell you that well over 30% of the abortions performed each year are performed at Planned Parenthood locations. What may surprise you is that Margaret Sanger was what's called a eugenicist, which is someone who believes in purification of the gene pool through various methods. One of those methods is abortion. She held some appalling beliefs about minorities, immigrants, the poor, and anyone she perceived as a lesser class of citizen. She believed her calling in life was to promote birth control, both through the development of the birth control pill and through methods that ended a pregnancy after conception. Her purpose to limit and control the population of these groups continues even to this day. Did you know that African Americans have the highest rates of abortion in our nation? Several years ago, an advertising agency put up a billboard in New York City that said, the most dangerous place for an African American is in the womb. Ironically, the public outcry that resulted was more about the offensive nature of the sign than it was about the fact that in New York City, 60% of African American babies are aborted. 60%. Don't gloss over that statistic. Think about what that means. Remember when I mentioned there had been almost 60 million abortions in the U.S. just since 1973? Well, to put some perspective on that, that's more than 5 times the number of people Hitler killed during his time in power. Hitler also was eugenicist and believed he was purifying the human race through his mass murders. Hundreds of thousands of Americans died in battle to defeat Hitler. And yet today, millions of Americans protest in defense of the acts that are grounded in the same philosophy as eugenics, all in the name of choice. But they don't define what choice means. Of course, a woman has the right to choose matters of her own health and body. No one is contesting that. The question then becomes, does a woman have the right to choose matters of health regarding the baby growing inside of her? Therein lies the debate. One side says that a baby isn't actually a baby until it's either able to sustain life on its own outside the mother's womb or until it is born. The argument varies depending on personal beliefs and individual cases. The other side says that a baby is a baby at conception and therefore the baby's rights to live supersedes the mother's right to choose to abort him or her. Both sides are passionate about their beliefs. You probably are too. But what does God say about the value of life and when it begins? That's what we'd like to consider. First of all, every single human being is created in the image of God. Genesis 1:26, God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground. If we truly believe that every single individual is created in God's image, then that has a big impact on how we view sanctity of life issues. The value of the life isn't found in the quality of the life. It's inherently valuable because it's the image of God. Think about that. You are made in the image of God. The unborn child is made in the image of the Almighty God. The senior citizen who no longer remembers basic functions is made in the image of God. Wow! Does that affect how you view those whose life quality may be difficult? Second of all, the Bible clearly indicates that the baby in the womb is a life. Two passages I'd like for you to consider are Psalm 139 and Luke 1. The former talks about how God created the life that is in the mother's womb and describes that creation as wonderful. The latter is an example of John the Baptist when he was still in his mother's womb, responding to being in the presence of Jesus, who was still in Mary's womb. Can you imagine that? In addition, Jeremiah 1:5 also describes God's intimate knowledge of the prophet Jeremiah before he was even formed in the womb. All three passages are included in today's homework. So as we conclude this video for today, I encourage you to read these passages and reflect on what they tell you about God's perspective of life and when it begins. Tomorrow we'll tackle another difficult topic: when life ends.